Joining us now, Newt Gingrich. What do you have to say about this, Newt?
Well, I think you saw in the tone and in the depth of Secretary Tillerson's comments why President Trump was so excited when Rex Tillerson agreed to leave ExxonMobil, one of the largest corporations in the world, and become Secretary of State. This is a very smart, very competent guy. He's very tough. Does he disagree on occasion with the president? Of course. Does he also respect the president? Of course. Is Washington a swamp designed to go out and cause the maximum negativity if you're a conservative? Of course. I thought this was a very good presentation, and I would give Rex A+ for this particular presentation. I thought it put a lot of things in the right context and moved us forward.
The left, the elites, just have not gotten used to this president. He is so different in style and demeanor that they just can't get used to him. And I don't think they ever will. I don't think these kind of reports will ever stop. They will always want to undermine this president. Are you with me?
Andrew Jackson, as a disruptive force, so offended the establishment that he did not get a positive biography for over 100 years, because nobody in the elite would write a positive biography about him. Donald J. Trump is that kind of a disruptive force. He takes on again and again, as he did recently with the NFL. And by the way, there's a poll out this morning that shows Trump at his highest approval rating, tied with the very highest he's gotten as president all year, while the NFL has been dropping in approval. He is working very hard. People give him, I think, A+ for handling Texas, Louisiana, and Florida. It took them a little while to get their feet in Puerto Rico. I think they were shocked at the level of devastation of the road system and of the electricity system, but they're now getting their feet there. And I think the president continues to build a bigger sense of, among people who are open to him, that he's a very serious, very competent guy. Now, if you're on the left, you dislike him on policy terms, you dislike him on personality terms, you dislike him on style terms, and you huddle with all of your friends and you chant, "We hate Trump," and that somehow makes them feel better.
Is the president on an upswing politically? You mentioned his approval rating out this morning. I'm not sure what that rating is. What, 43, 44, 45%, something like that?
Something like that. It was the highest he's got, tied the highest he's gotten since the inaugural. Look, I think he is in an upswing. I think the tax bill, which now gets, I think, 53 or 54% approval from the American people, who actually want the Democrats to work with the president to get tax cuts through. The tax bill is a very good place for them to spend the next 2 months getting it done. And I think it's a very big deal. And I think as people come to realize just how good this tax bill is, and by't way, I've taken to carrying around, this is the Paul Ryan postcard size tax form that 85 or 90% of all Americans would fill out. And it gives you a good sense and gives you a secondary tax cut for all the people who would not have to pay a tax preparer or a tax attorney or a CPA. So I think taxes is going to further help Trump. I think the economy is going to help Trump. But I think also for most Americans, they're getting used to who he is. I mean, is he occasionally a little bit out of control? Sure. That's who he is. Is he remarkably serious about getting things done? The Wall Street Journal just did a great editorial pointing out that his judgeships are probably better than Reagan's. And he has really done a superb job of finding very highly qualified conservative judges.
The president yesterday in Puerto Rico suggested that we would wipe out Puerto Rico's debt. Now, we're trying to clarify that. I talked to Mick Mulvaney this morning. He suggests that we're not going to bail Puerto Rico out. They've got $73 billion worth of debt. They're basically bankrupt. We are not going to come in with American taxpayer money to bail them out. I suspect that, too, will be a popular move by this president.
Well, look, I think that, and I saw your interview with Mulvaney, who I thought did a very good job of expressing himself. I think what the president was probably saying as a businessman is, if you're a bondholder for Puerto Rico, you better expect to have a pretty big haircut. Because you're going to get into a bankruptcy court, and the fact is the Puerto Rican government doesn't have any money. I think what the U.S. government will do, and I just wrote a paper which is available both at foxnews.com and as my newsletter, which is free at Gingrich Productions, on thinking about a 21st century Puerto Rico. Remember, this is an island whose politicians have done a terrible job. Their infrastructure is obsolete and has not been maintained. Their electric grid system was bankrupt. They have consistently failed to provide leadership for the island. And so here's an opportunity to step in, not to rebuild a crumbling 20th century system, but to really leapfrog and go into putting in new kinds of infrastructure, new kinds of approaches. I outlined that in a paper today, which has actually been circulating at the White House for the last 4 or 5 days. I think that kind of investment the federal government will make, because we're not going to let Puerto Rico's America. And we're not going to let Puerto Rico sit there without highways, without infrastructure, without cell phone coverage. But let's go in and do it intelligently. Let's not just try to rebuild the past, because the past, frankly, has been allowed to decay by a generation of Puerto Rican politicians.
Yes, sir. Newt Gingrich, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Don't be such a stranger, Mr. Gingrich. There's a welcome for you here any day.
Good to be with you.